Over
Well,
to you.
I'll add one comment on Diane's thing. Both you and I have seen this unconformity in many places. So you can go to the western half of the UK. You can travel with me to Canada. I'll show you where it is. You can come into Europe, and I can show you some spots there, or even here in Australia. So the so-called missing thing is, as the author says, fairly global. But what is it? Is it millions of years of missing stuff? Or is it just a line on the ground that you think had a lot more stuff there in the past? It's rather awkward to prove something isn't. So keep that in mind as we discuss the rest of the day, because that great unconformity is where most of life supposedly evolved, in the bit that's not there. Now, going just by way of introduction here, I brought with me this morning. I went down in the dark, rainy weather here in Queensland. But at least it's been raining on my place. It's cool and it's wet. Isn't that a pretty flower? Now, you won't see this flower very often in Queensland, except as a weed. Like in my place, it's growing over several hectares of ground. It grows very flamboyantly, it spreads really rapidly. It belongs to this plant here. Yes, I picked all these this morning, but this one doesn't take loss of water too quickly. You can see its nice green leaves. Now, one of the things that most people do is, number one, they'll get the mower out and mow these down by the ton. The flowers, well, I remember my mum telling me, don't play with those flowers, don't pick them, don't suck yeah, kids sort of pick up stems and suck if they're nice. And my mum used to call it pee the bed. It was a warning. In fact, I think parents have done this for ages. If you've got stuff you don't want the kids to pick up, give it a supposedly negative name. But healthy plant, cool, moist weather coming up, nice big leaves, healthy looking flowers. Now, Diane and I have picked this version of that plant for several years now. This plant is a mutant version of this one here. By the way, look at the size of the leaves by comparison. Can you see the plant that suffered some sort of, we'll call it a somatic or a body mutation, where the leaves lose their ability to produce chlorophyll, and as a result, they don't do very well. This version of the plant doesn't ever seem, as far as we can find, to bear beautiful flowers. Of course, I'd like to be able to breed this variety of plant, because on my whole 2 hectares or so of land, there's only 2 or 3 of these plants. So I can guarantee that if we can breed this one, A, it'll look pretty, because people think these variegated plants are pretty. B, it won't seem to get out of control. So, 2 things about this plant. You see, this sort of changes how evolution is supposed to have occurred, but this is a negative change. This is a negative mutation. This does not help the plant produce its own kind, and it slows it down in any way, shape possible. Of course, I have other versions of this type of factor. Look at this lovely, healthy plant here. This one grows all through my backyard, all up the trees and forest, but occasionally it will mutate as well. Let me show you the mutation. See, it's lost chlorophyll. It's lost its ability to be a healthy big leaf. This one has to parasitize its plant food from the rest of the plant, where, yes, occasionally you'll find the big leaves. Of course, what's interesting is you only ever find this version of the plant growing along the ground. This one grows along the ground, grows up the trees, grows over the fences, is an incredibly healthy and voracious plant. Mutations are real, but the sort of mutation I've shown you, which is the mechanism by which evolution is supposed to have occurred, sorry, not this mutation. This is a downhill trend. When God created plants to produce their own kind, anything that's gone wrong since then tends to get it out of control, tends to actually degenerate the plant, right to the point where it no longer even has the ability to make flowers. I haven't ever seen one on these, and Diane and I have gone and run experiments on these down on our property here. It's actually good to get out, as Craig said, and as Joe said, see what's happening in the real world with mutations. Mutations actually produce degeneration. And loss of control, that's what produces weeds. Yes, weeds are just plants that are growing too good for the rest of the environment. They're stealing stuff, they're outdoing things. We're living in a world in which evolution is supposed to have produced it, but every change you see is actually either neutral or going downhill. Now, that's my biological background, which I'll come back to with the geology, because geology is supposed to be the evidence that this used to be a bit of seaweed that evolved up onto the land. And only after it got on the land did it mutate to this version that you can see today.